interest.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yes. Yes, it is.
That's great. All kinds of hints.
Put a light on it? Okay.
Okay, so everybody ready? Got your microphone? Okay, 30 seconds and then go.
All right.
Okay, so I should see something on here, right?
Oh, we shouldn't be able to hear them, right?
All right, good evening, everyone. It is 6 o'clock and we will come to order. Please join me in starting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, everyone. To start with, we'll do some roll call introductions. District 1.
Jason Wienerman.
Thank you. Dave Bentrood is not here yet. Apparently, he's going to be late with us this evening. District 3.
Jason Crone here.
Thank you. I am District 4. I'm your chair, Sean Blackburn. District 5.
Jacob Hawk, present.
At large.
Richard Blankish here.
And at large number 2.
Tara Osendorf here.
Thank you. And our ex officio.
Commissioner Joe Persky.
Thank you, Joe. Now, we do have a lot of things on the docket this evening, so please work with us and be patient at the same time, but we need to move along and get things taken care of. Our agenda item number 1 is for Roses Ponderosa. If you would come up and have a seat in the applicant spot. This application is to consider a plat entitled Roses Ponderosa, consisting of 4 residential lots and 1 outlot. The plat was submitted by Rose Shalonka of Avon, according to Stearns County Subdivision Ordinance number 230, and Land Use and Zoning Ordinance number 439. The 51.27 acre plat is in part of the southwest quarter of Section 24, and part of the northwest quarter of Section 25, lying south of County Road 4 and west of 83rd Avenue in St. Wendell Township. The property address is 34259 County Road 4 in St. Joe, Minnesota. Then let's get a review of the item then, please.
Good evening. This plat consists of 4 residential lots and 1 outlot. This may be familiar to a few of you from a few years ago. There was a 7-lot plat proposed. And at that time, the Planning Commission had reviewed it and recommended approval with the condition that the stormwater management plan be engineered and submitted and approved. And through that review, it was discovered that the stormwater standards could not be met out on this property. So the plat never got finalized, never got recorded. So now they're back with a 4-lot plat to stay underneath the threshold that requires the stormwater plan. So that's why we're back here again. So 4 residential lots, 1 of those contains the existing building site, and then 3 will be new buildable lots. The outlot will be non-buildable. They've identified septic sites for each parcel. For the building sites, there's adequate room to meet setbacks. There will be restrictions on the amount of impervious allowed on each parcel, each lot, along with the location of where the homes can be. So on the preliminary plat, the building sites are going to be required to be on that east 250 feet of the lots. And then they're going to be 2, 3, and 4 are going to be limited to 8,499 square feet of impervious surface, each to stay under, so the plats as a whole, all the lots as a whole stay under 1 acre of new impervious surface. So that's where that number's coming from. Lot 1 is allowed to have, that's the existing building site. they're allowed to keep the impervious that they have and they cannot increase it. So if they want to build a new house there, they're gonna have to remove some of the buildings or figure that out. I believe they have about 17,000 square feet on that lot right now. So that's where those restrictions are all stemming from, is to not trigger the stormwater plan requirement. The lots all meet feedlot setbacks. There was a delineation done in 2020 that was approved, and that's still a valid delineation. There is an unnamed tributary to the Wattab River that runs through the northwest corner of the plat. Park dedication fee will be required. St. Wendell Township did review and approve the preliminary plat in April. Drainage and utility easements are shown along the road and along the proposed lot lines. Plating committee did review it and recommended on to the planning commission with the following conditions. A declaration of restriction to protect the two soil treatment areas that are shown for each lot, that those remain undisturbed and natural. Subdivision agreement stating the following. Construction site best management practices are required during construction. Stake and rope off septic areas on each lot during ground disturbing activity. The soil borings conducted on the property indicate groundwater table within 6 feet of the natural ground surface, so the bottom floor elevation of a home will be restricted. The wetland delineation approved for Rosas Ponderosa is valid for 5 years from the date of the delineation decision. There will be a structure setback to the wetlands within each lot. Wetlands shall be identified on the construction site plan and shall be reviewed by wetlands staff and shall be protected with silt fence prior to ground disturbance. Residential dwellings, accessory structures, and impervious surface shall be constructed on the east 250 feet of lots 2, 3, and 4 as shown on the preliminary plat and attached as the exhibit to the subdivision agreement. There will be no exceptions to that standard. Lots 2, 3, and 4 are limited to a maximum of 8,499 square feet of impervious surface. Lot 1 is limited to a maximum of 17,310 square feet of impervious surface. No structures or impervious surface are allowed on Outlot A. The plat of Rosas Ponderosa is located in an ag area, and the construction, expansion, and operation of animal feedlots and ag uses are permitted. On Lot 1, access to the northwest side of the stream is limited and shall meet the requirements of the Wetland Conservation Act. And at the time of construction site permit issuance for a structure on Lot 1, the access shall be relocated from County Road 4 to 83rd Avenue. There will also be a declaration of restriction for the equivalent land area. A water supply verification for the nitrates is required with the plat. A highway certificate is required. A consent to plat from the mortgage company will be required, and a $3,000 parkland dedication fee is required.
All right, thank you. Let's do a quick roll call of the members of the panel who have visited the site. Jason?
Yes.
Dave's not here with us. Other Jason?
Not this time, years ago.
All
actually.
right. Thank you. I was there. Jake?
Yep, I was there.
Rich?
Yes, I was.
Tara?
Yes.
And Joe?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you all. Now, would you like to please introduce yourselves, your name and addresses, and add anything that you'd like to?
Roseanne Shalanka. Address is 12635 County Road 3, Avon, Minnesota.
Thank you.
My name is Stan Shalanka. My address is 11820 260th Street, St. Cloud, Minnesota.
All right, thank you. Now, was there anything that you wanted to add to the report or the request at this time?
I don't think so. We went through and addressed everything. Everything spelled out how much surface area. That was the sticking area that we had last time. And we went down in lots from 7 to 4, so
Well, there's
should have covered all the bases.
a lot of comments, a lot of rules, a lot of things that have to be done to pass this one. Commission members, questions, comments? Anyone? Joe?
Yes. Rose, hi. They got me hidden back here behind the podium.
That's a better place to put you.
Yeah. A lot of people think that. Okay, Rose, Stan, I'll tell you what, I have no problem with the plat. I think it's good, and I just want to know, are you in agreement with the things we've got here? Just a couple questions. The outlot, is that an access between the four there and the outlot? Is that a access to the back side of the other property?
The only access point on that property is if you go on 83rd Street, there's a drive path going in.
And that's to the property in the back? Yeah,
Correct.
Right
Yeah.
behind the outlot, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, and then do you have any plans for that outlot? In other words, could it be, what do I want to say, jointed to any of for example, the piece that's behind it? Or could the neighbor that's on the other side, use that if he wants to pasture, let's say, or something like that?
Any of the neighbors
Don't
could
have any
purchase
plans.
it if they would
Right,
prefer,
so
like to, yes.
It would be
Like to.
available for purchase. Okay, good enough.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone else? Now, this is a public hearing. We are open to the public. If there's anyone here who wishes to address us or speak on this matter,
We have the
Please.
one letter too.
in one letter, I was going to get to that. Is there anyone present? No? Let's talk about the letter then.
All right, so I did receive actually 2 letters from the neighbor, Ken Schindel, which you've received those via email, and you've got copies up there. So I'll just highlight what his main concerns were. He's concerned with the buyers exceeding the impervious limits for each lot, and he was concerned with the septic locations for lots 2 and 3. He questioned who will be in charge of ensuring compliance with all these standards, and then wanted to see these restrictions placed as covenants so buyers are aware of them. So I can go ahead and address his concerns for you.
Please.
So yeah, concerned with exceeding impervious limits. It's going to be spelled out in the subdivision agreement, which gets recorded, so that gets to his concern about being covenants recorded against the property. And in compliance, it's going to be like anything else in our zoning ordinance. When we talk to people, when we issue permits, we'll make sure that's in compliance. And if someone does something more than they're supposed to and we find out about it, we've got our complaint process and compliance process to deal with that if it happens. As far as the septic site locations on lot 2 and 3, they are, you probably noticed, way on the west end of the property. Technically, that meets the requirement of Minnesota rule for septics. It's just the lot needs to be able to support 2 standard septic systems. It doesn't say it needs to be within so many feet of the buildable area. It just says the lot has to be able to support it. So even though those are further away, they're not required to place the septics in those locations, but it does show that the lot does have a couple areas where a system could go. So I think that gets at the
So
bulk of his
concerns have been addressed, and they are addressed in the conditions.
I believe so,
basically,
yeah.
Yeah. In the other letter?
No, that was all that
Okay,
I had.
okay. Anyone
All
else,
right.
questions, comments?
No, if no one's here, I'll make a motion of close public hearing.
All right, we've got a motion and a second.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Further discussion.
No, just to maybe reiterate, in review, it looks like most of the concerns expressed by the neighbors are addressed in the conditions, which is a good thing. So therefore, it seems pretty straightforward.
I agree. Should we go to the findings of facts then? Let's do that. Is the proposal consistent with the zoning ordinance? Why or why not?
Mr. Chair, I believe it is under Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439, Section 9.6, Subdivision Ordinance 230, Sections 5 and 8. It is consistent.
Thank you, Jason. Number 2, does the proposal conform to the comprehensive plan of the county? And please list applicable sections.
Mr. Chair, Jason Wienerman here. I believe it does under the living goals. So living goal number 1, we're collaborating with cities and townships to maintain sustainable growth patterns. So the townships approved the plat. The conditions under Condition number 2, managing impacts of growth and development on county's rural character. That's identified by the conditions. And then also, finally, number 3, support housing options that give people in all life stages. So depending upon who buys this property, we could see a variety of economic income individuals moving into the region.
Thank you, Jason. Number 3, is the proposal compatible with the existing neighborhood? Why or why not?
Mr. Chair, just looking at St. Wendell Township and the amount of rezonings in that area over the last decade, it's becoming consistent with that neighborhood. People looking for kind of rural development.
Thank you, Jason. Number 4, how has the applicant demonstrated that standards and criteria stated in the ordinance will be satisfied?
Mr. Chair, I believe the applicant has demonstrated that the standards and criteria in the ordinance will be satisfied through the conditions and the replatting that they've provided.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other issues pertinent to this matter we need to touch on?
I think they tried to address everything as far as localities and the neighbors' concerns as well, so I think they did a pretty good job with that.
Thank you, Jake.
And Mr. Chair, just as stated earlier, the township has recommended approval of this, as has the plating committee.
Thank you. All right. I'm looking for a motion then.
Motion to approve the replatting and with the 7 conditions.
Thank you, Jason. Sorry?
I'll second.
Second from Rich Blankish. Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, folks. Thank you. All right. That should take care of it. On to number 2. Number 2 on the agenda is an application to rezone, to consider a rezoning request submitted by Glenn and Connie Pesta of Rice, Minnesota. According to Section 4.10 of Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439, to rezone approximately 15 acres from the transition or T20 zoning district to the residential 5 zoning district. The property is part of the southeast quarter, northwest quarter, lying at the east end of 427th Street in Section 12 of Brockway Township. The property address is 8120 427th Street in Rice, Minnesota. A quick review of members who visited the site. Jason?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
I did. Jake?
I did.
Rich Blankish?
I did.
Tara Ostendorf?
I did not.
And Joe Persky?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. On to staff report, please. And if the Pestas are here, please come up.
All right, so this is a rezoning of 15 acres from T20 to residential 5. The intent is to split off a residential lot for their son to build on. The access is to 427th Street, which is a township road. Property consists of woods and grass, the existing building site. There is a topography change. It drops about 60 feet to the northeast corner. There's no setback impacts with this request. There are approximately 48 homes, 1 multi-family housing property, 1 feedlot with greater than 10 animal units, and 3 feedlots with less than 10 animal units within a half mile of the property. And it's surrounded on all sides by rural residential lots, woodland, and wetland. The surrounding properties are all zoned Transition 20 or Residential 5. It's not within any overlay districts or areas of concern. With this rezoning, they would be allowed to split 2 additional residential parcels here. A comprehensive plan shows this as an ag rural area and as concentrated development, so it splits the property. Brockway Township did recommend approval of the rezoning also. That's all that I have.
Okay. Please introduce yourself.
Connie Pesta, 8120 427th Street in Rice, Minnesota.
Thank you. Was there anything that you wanted to add at this time?
No, thank you.
All righty. Commission, some questions?
Mr. Chair, quick question for staff. So T20, that's the zoning that basically, we're not changing anything that already exists, but that's not a zoning option that's really available anymore, right? That's sunsetted?
Correct. Yeah, the T20 and R20 districts were closed.
Yeah.
13, 14 years ago.
Yep.
So it's not an option for other properties to rezone to that anymore.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. That's what I thought.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just a question for the applicant. So the purpose of the rezoning is to allow building of a family member in the lot as well.
Correct.
So have you thought about just parceling off one section to do an R5 as opposed to the entire lot?
I don't know if that's a possibility.
It would be an option. We didn't really discuss just rezoning part of it.
Okay.
But that is an option too, to just rezone 5 acres of it.
We have no intention to sell the other lot or make changes on that parcel.
The reason I ask is
Yeah.
once we do this, it becomes permanent. So if you sell it down the road, the next people could move it. So that was the reason for my question.
Mr. Chair, I strongly agree, Jason. That's my concern as well. Connie, is that there's going to be a time when we're not all going to be here. And we want to avoid conflict down the road so that, you can have what you want as far as getting your son in that place, okay? But when that changes hands, we don't want to create a problem for folks in the future.
Correct.
So we're doing the rezoning here, but when you take a look at the platting, you might want to make sure that the two homes are accessible so that, one has one property and one's the other property. It just makes for better planning, and that's why the 7 of these folks are here, and that's why it comes to the board as well. It may be fine now, but again, we have to look to the future and what it would look like in the future, so
Okay.
keep that in mind. And when I was out there and looking at it, I was going to say, how are you going to carve this? And I couldn't see what your plan was. And I don't know, because it's your son, you may do something about, okay, that building would be on his property and the other building would be on yours because you have that mutual agreement. But again, when we're gone, that's going to have to be separated. So, yeah. Okay?
Thank you, Joe. Anyone else? This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this issue or any correspondence?
Written correspondence on this one.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the public hearing and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Nope. Motion carries.
Mr. Chair, just to follow up with Ms. Pesta, would you be amenable to a 5-acre split? So if we were to split off 5 acres and then leave the rest as T20, would that be amenable to you?
I think we would prefer to have it so if we were rezoned, our intentions are to leave to gift or sell our son 2.5 acres so he can build on it.
Okay.
And leave the other intact and not. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, so I think the minimum to rezone would be rezoning at least 5 acres. You can rezone the whole parcel. You could rezone down to 5 acres just to get one additional building entitlement and then go through the plat to just split 2.5 acres for your son.
Okay.
So I think that's what Jason's asking, if you are okay with just rezoning 5 acres, if you know the area where he wants to build, rezoning 5 acres there, and then keeping 10 of it still T20.
And then we would still be able to keep.
You could still split it 2.5 and 12.5. You could still keep the lots
Okay.
the way that we had talked about.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have no intention of changing the other part, so if you think that's a good suggestion, and we have no problem with that. I get what you're saying.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, yeah, staff, you can work with them on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Either way, I think the goal, my understanding, is just the 1 2.5 acre lot for her son. So we can accomplish that by rezoning 5 acres or all 15.
Okay.
We can make that work.
So don't we have to change the language here then?
Well, the recommendation would change. If you didn't want to rezone the whole thing, then you would recommend just rezoning a certain 5 acres, and then we would need a legal description for that.
If we were going to do that, would we not be better off going R5 and R10? Just to get rid of that T20, which isn't really recognized anymore, to accomplish the same thing? I'm just asking to keep
Right.
it cleaner in the future.
Right. I don't know that we can do that with the way the notice was. I don't know
Oh.
that we can add R10 into
Okay.
it with the notice only being for R5 tonight.
Understood. Yep, that makes sense. Okay.
But-
Not a big deal then.
Mr. Chair? Okay, but if that would be their choice, could they make that recommendation to bring it back?
I guess we're a little bit on a timeline.
Well, to build?
Yeah.
Okay,
So that would be our only concern.
okay. Then we better make a decision.
All right.
Further discussion?
So then just to provide a little more additional clarity, so if we do an R5 and then leave it the T20 as the 10 acres, at a future time, they can come back and ask for the T10 to be split to 2 R5s. So we're not permanently protecting the T10, we're just doing it now.
Correct. They could come back in the future and ask to rezone the rest of it again.
Right.
Yeah, they would have that option.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, then who's going to see how that's going to be divided?
Well, we would need to know if you guys have a preference on what 5 acres gets rezoned. Will they need a legal description for the final approval? If it's only going to be part of the parcel, a legal description will need to be drawn up for the 5 acres that's going to be rezoned. So you guys would have to decide if you care which 5 acres, or can it be whatever 5 acres they decide, or...
Okay, just opinion
Or
one here.
keep it the
Honestly,
whole.
if we rezone the whole thing to R5, the chances of it coming back in 10 years and taking an old T20 and changing it to R1s is probably less likely. I'm fine either way on it, but I'm just trying to think if you want to limit that congested growth, I think it's almost harder in the future to shift R5s to R1s than it would be a T20. But maybe I'm looking at it wrong. Just another thought since we went down this path. I'm good either way. I was just throwing that out there as another thought.
I'll piggyback on that. I think it should all be R5. When you look at the other parcels around it, it only makes sense. I think it kind of clarifies it, solidifies it, and it'll make it easier for the client to
plat.
do what they want to do.
Like I said, we have no intention of doing more splits with it. This is really hard enough on my husband to split the land the way it is. Farm Boy does not like to change the land, so he's barely willing to do it for his son. So there'll be no additional sales for the other 5.
Good stuff. All right. You all right on your end?
Oh yeah, just exploring options.
Yep. Nope. Good. All right.
Nothing more?
Nothing more.
All right, let's go with the findings of facts then. Is the proposal consistent with the zoning ordinance? Why or why not? Where's the number?
Mr. Chair, I'm looking for the number, but I do believe, I mean, I know it's consistent to rezone. Do you got it? Go ahead, Rich. I was looking for the
Well,
number.
the request is consistent with the 9.7 residential district R5. Items 9.7.1 defines the purpose, and 9.7.7 residential density requirements. So it meets those two.
Thank you, Rich. Does the proposal conform to the comprehensive plan of the county? Applicable sections, please.
All right, Mr. Chair, I believe it does, and it's actually a bunch of them, but I'm going to go with support housing options that give people in all stages and of all economic means viable choices for safe, stable, and affordable homes under the living goals section.
Thank you, Jason.
And Mr. Chair, if I could add, when this parcel was zoned T20, that was a temporary zoning.
Yeah.
So we're actually cleaning up the zoning and getting rid of the T20.
Thank you. And you're correct.
Well stated.
All right, number 3, is the proposal compatible with the existing neighborhood?
Mr. Chair, I believe it is. As Rich mentioned a second ago, everything to the east is already zoned R5.
I agree, thank you. How has the applicant demonstrated that standards and criteria stated in the ordinance will be satisfied?
Mr. Chair, the intent of the applicant is to build a single house for a family member on the parcel. The 2 remaining R5s will unlikely be sold by this individual in the near future. So conversion to an R5 will meet the transitional standard and also the intent of the ordinance.
All right, thank you very much. Other issues pertinent to this matter at all? Anything from the township or federal state permits or anything we need to address or mention?
Brockway Township recommended approval.
Thank you.
Connie, if I can, do you have a preference for where that house is going to go?
Yes.
I'll tell you, again, one of the issues comes down when you're placing something on there, like, of course, comes to fire and rescue. Okay, and again, when this thing gets, are you looking at the spot to the north, to the left when you come in, or where are you looking?
Yes, right next to Millbowers there.
Right.
Oh,
And-
nope, on the other
Down
side,
here.
right there.
Okay, so yeah, and that it would be that's what I was hoping we would see, because when you come in on that drive, then you've got either side, instead of, if you would park it in the back behind those buildings, you know, we could run into some problems, so,
Yes,
all right,
it's right there.
okay, I have no problem with that.
All right, thank you, Joe. All right, I'll expect a motion then.
Mr. Chair, Jason Wienerman here. I move that we recommend the full board approve the rezoning request,
Thank you, Jason.
transitioning from T20 to 3R5.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
And Rich seconds it. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
On to number 3.
Do we know when the next county board is? The next June 4th?
Yes, June 4th. Most, not all of these items will be on the June 4th agenda.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that.
I know that. That's pathetic. Why do I know that? Jeez.
All right.
That is amazing.
Agenda item number 3 is from Valerius and Julia Knobloch. It is, the request is to consider rezoning approximately 5 acres from the Ag 40 zoning district to the R1 zoning district in accordance with Section 4.10 of Torrance County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439. The purpose of the rezoning request is for residential development. Members who visited the site, please. Jason?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
I did. Jake?
I did.
Rich? I did. Tara?
Yes.
And Joe?
I did not.
Thank you. All right, staff report, please. Jen?
All right, so this is rezoning 5 acres from A40 to R1. The intent is similar. It's to split for one more residential parcel for family. The access is to County Road 40. The property consists of trees and yard space, contains an existing building site, and gradually slopes down from the road to the north end of the property. There's no setback impacts with this request. There are approximately 10 homes, 1 feedlot with greater than 10 animal units, and 1 feedlot with less than 10 animal units within a half mile of the property. And it's surrounded by a mix of rural residential lots, agricultural land, woodland, and wetland. It's surrounded by Agriculture 40 zoning. It's not within any overlay districts or areas of concern. And Farming Township did recommend approval of the rezoning. Alternatives to the rezoning would be to see if there's an adjacent landowner willing to sell a building entitlement, or construct an accessory dwelling unit. Would be a couple alternatives, potentially for the rezoning. That is all that I have.
All righty. Please introduce yourselves.
My name is Val Knobloch, and this is my wife, Julie Knobloch. And we are currently in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, where we work. The place that we just were talking about is something we purchased about 13 years ago. And currently our family member is living there right now with his family.
All right. Could we get your mailing address, please?
1318 Cameron Street, Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Thank you. Anything more that you want to add to the report, the discussion at this point?
I don't think so. I mean, your questions are very good when they come, so.
All right. Well, let's go to that then. Anyone with some questions?
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Tara.
Can you just discuss the alternatives and why they don't work for you?
One of the alternatives was to try to get a building credit, and we contacted our neighbors, and no one either had one available or were willing to part with one. You can't do this, but we do have another family in the next township that does have, but they weren't adjoining. We're looking to try to do a single level house because I have some knee issues and some other things. The current house right now is a bi-level that Julie's brother is renting from us right now. Our intention is to move up here and to retire up here and to take care of the orchard that exists there right now, but that's the purpose.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, question for the applicant. So it says on the report you're looking at splitting off 5 acres to the R1. Why'd you pick the R1 district as opposed to the R5?
I didn't pick, it was recommended. We simply wanted a building credit so that we could have a second dwelling on the property. The other option that was given to us was something that would be less than 1,000 square feet, including a garage, and that just seemed too small for us to, we needed.
Mr. Chair, I can address that too. So the current lot size is 5 acres. So to get another building entitlement, they needed their option was to rezone to residential 1.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, if I may then, by allowing them to do that, then would they be able to plat it actually into 5 different lots?
There would be 5 residential building entitlements. Now I don't know if the lay of the land supports that, but there would be 5 building entitlements if the whole parcel is rezoned to residential 1.
Anything
Mr. Chair,
further?
I was just going to throw out, knowing this property, I mean, I understand the concern, but I just am not.
I don't see it happening.
I'm not seeing it happening. So at least not in our lifetimes, more than likely. It's not going to be a hotbed of residential growth west of Lake Hink.
Well, so what was introduced by staff was there's 5 building entitlements we're creating, right?
Correct. Yeah, the zoning, if it's zone residential 1, it's 5 acres. You get 1 building entitlement per acre in the residential 1. So there would be 5 building entitlements.
So they could build 1 here and then down the road distribute the 4.
True. No. So my point was technically you could. I don't know that the demand would be there to
And
cause problems.
to address that too, there are rules on where they could be transferred out. You can't transfer from a residential district to an ag district.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So it wouldn't be just a free for all being able to transfer them out.
Okay.
At least not under the current rules.
Oh, I'm trying. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just that I'm just wondering, I would be more comfortable having it split into two properties opposed to putting it into 5 properties. I don't know if that's an option or not.
Well, we can't condition a rezoning, so
Okay.
it would have to be rezoning just part of the property then if you didn't want them to have all 5 building entitlements. It would come back to, like we talked about with the last one, is just rezoning 1 acre or 2 acres or something instead of the whole thing.
I don't see that it makes much difference.
I don't see that the need for that.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Does anyone wishes to speak on this matter, or if we have any correspondence?
No written correspondence on this one.
Anyone in the audience? No? Thank you, Heidi. Right, motion to close.
Mr. Chair, so moved.
Second.
I have a motion to close and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Further discussion of any kind? Dave, glad you could join us here. We are talking about agenda item number 3. Anyone?
No.
All right, let's go to the findings of facts then. Let's see. Is the proposal consistent with the zoning ordinance? Why or why not?
Mr. Chair, I do believe it's consistent with section 4.10 of the Land Use and Zoning Ordinance number 439.
Thank you. Does the proposal conform to the comprehensive plan of the county? List applicable sections.
Mr. Chair, similar to the last one, I believe it falls into the living pillars, and that provides for, well, there's a few of them, but we'll go support housing options that give people in all stages of life and of all economic means viable choices for safe, stable, and affordable homes.
Thank you. Is the proposal compatible with the existing neighborhood? Why or why not?
Mr. Chair, Jason Raymond, the applicant intends to build a single house on a small lot, dual family living. They intend to maintain the winery trees as a place, so I believe it is compatible with the surrounding uses.
Thank you. Has the applicant demonstrated that standards and criteria stated in the ordinance will be satisfied?
Mr. Chair, they've been working with staff to try to figure out the appropriate zoning and property setup so that they can build a future home on their property.
Thank you. Thank you. Other issues pertinent to the matter? Anything from township?
Township approved.
Thank you, Rich. Any environmental concerns or anything?
No.
Oh, all right. I expect a motion then,
Chair,
please.
before we move it on, just wondering, Heidi, are there any other R1s close to this?
It's surrounded by agriculture 40. The closest residential is that residential 10 to the northeast, which is probably about half a mile away.
And again, to me, it's a question of density. That if we do go with R1, he does have the potential to put that in the single lots, right? Yeah, and that's just concerning to me. I was hoping we could have another way where we could just split it and have 2 pieces, but.
Fair enough. You and the county commissioners can work on that. I don't have a concern with it. I'll recommend approval. This is just helping someone to be able to build a house on their own property. I'm just not worried about it spreading and having legs.
No, and I have no trouble with another house. I'm having trouble with 5 houses on that property.
It still has to go through platting, and that's where that could get straightened out.
Okay.
So I will recommend approval.
I have a motion to approve
I'll second that.
and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, good luck with it.
Thanks.
On to number 4. Number 4. What do you know? Another rezoning request. Brian and Lori McAdams This is a request to consider rezoning approximately 10 acres from the Ag 40 zoning district to the R10 zoning district in accordance with Section 4.10 of Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439. The purpose of the rezoning request is for residential development. Now let's go through a quick roll call of those members who visited the site. Jason?
Yes.
Dave?
I did not.
Jason?
Yes.
I did. Jake?
I did.
Rich?
I did.
Tara?
I did not.
And Joe?
Yes.
Thank you. Staff report, please, Heidi.
Okay, so this is a 40-acre lot. They're requesting to rezone just 10 acres of it to R10 for their son to be able to build a house. Access is to 263rd Avenue, which is a township road. The property consists of farmland and grassland, is relatively flat. The applicants do have a feedlot area on their parcel, so with this rezoning, they'll be limited to a maximum of 9.99 animal units on the property. That's the only setback impact that there is out here. There are approximately 6 homes, 1 feedlot with greater than 10 animal units and 1 feedlot with less than 10 animal units within a half mile of the property. And it's surrounded by a mix of rural residential lots, agricultural land, and wetland. The property is surrounded by Agriculture 80, Agriculture 40, and Transition 20 zoning. And there's some residential 10 zoning about a half a mile to the southeast. The property is not within any overlay districts or areas of concern. This rezoning would add just 1 additional residential built dwelling unit out here. The land evaluation site assessment score was 71.35, and Paynesville Township did recommend approval of the rezoning. Yep.
All right. The applicant's here with us. Please come up. Introduce yourselves, please.
I'm Brian McAdams,
Your address, please.
19813 263rd Avenue, Paynesville.
Thank you.
Hannah Schaust, also 19813 263rd. I just moved there, Avenue, Paynesville, Minnesota.
This is my son's fiance.
Yes.
Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything you want to add to the report?
I know since the last group they asked about buying titles for a building entitlement, we did contact the neighbors who had building entitlements around there, and nobody was interested in selling one. So this was kind of our option at this point.
All right. Thank you. Commission members, questions?
Mr. Chair, question for the staff. So we have the access road across from the parcel. Is there any problem with that creating access to this parcel?
Since it's a township road, it'll be, the township would need to be the one to review any new access approaches on 263rd Avenue. I suspect they aren't concerned since they recommended approval, but that would be something they would address when they would be the permitting authority for the house out here, so they would address that at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Anything more, anyone? Nothing? This is an open public hearing. If there's anyone here to speak or address us on this matter. I know we do have some letters, right?
Yep, we just got one letter, so I'll just read that quick. It just says, I am McAdams' neighbor to the north of their property. I am in favor of their decision to rezone 10 of their acres for their son, Clayton McAdams. Feel free to contact me. Janet Klein. So that's the only letter that we got.
All right, thank you. I need a motion.
Make a motion, we close the public hearing.
Second.
A motion has been made to close and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Further discussion.
Pretty straightforward. I would just add it's right next to another T20 zoning, so this is an area where it's kind of one of those transition areas, not too far outside of town.
Right. Yeah. All right. Should we just move on to the findings of facts then? Let's do that. Is the proposal consistent with the zoning ordinance? Why or why not?
Jason, you mind restating the number
Sure.
you just rattled off? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, it's consistent with section 4.10 of the county land use ordinance number 439.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. Does the proposal conform with the comprehensive plan of the county? List applicable sections.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to stick with the popular one for the last few, and that's living goals, and I'm just going to paraphrase as providing options for people in all stages of life.
Thank you. Thank you. Is the proposal compatible with the existing neighborhood? Why or why not?
Mr. Chair, the proposal is consistent with or compatible with the existing neighborhood and the zoning around the proposed plat.
Thank you, Tara. Has the applicant demonstrated that standards and criteria stated stated in the ordinance will be satisfied?
I think it's noteworthy that they tried to see if there was building entitlements available prior to going through the application process, and they've been working with the county since.
Thank you. Other issues pertinent to this matter? Anything from the township?
Painesville Township approved this.
Thank you. Any other concerns at all? All right, I expect a motion.
I
then.
will recommend we approve the rezoning.
Thank you. I have a motion to approve and a second.
I'll second.
And a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Good luck.
On to item number 5. And this is a conditional use permit request submitted by Thomas and Mary Walker of Lakeville, Minnesota. According to sections 10.2.11B, Part 3 of Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439, the request is to construct at and below grade steps on steep slope and bluff areas in the shore impact zone of Little Birch Lake. The property is Lot 4, Block 1 of the LSAT edition of Section 35 of Melrose Township. The property address is 32729 Birchfield Court in Melrose. Members who visited the site, Jason?
Yes.
Dave?
I did not.
Jason?
Sir Chair, I did, but I'm going to abstain from this one. In reviewing the packet, there's some product that's going to be used that our company manufactures, so I don't want to have any conflict of interest.
All right, thank you so much. I was at the site. Jake?
I did.
Rich?
I did.
Tara?
I did not.
And Joe?
Yes, I did.
Thank you. Staff report, please, Heidi.
I'll take care of this one,
Oh,
Mr.
okay,
Chair,
then.
members
Sure,
of the Planning
sorry.
Commission. Yep. Yeah, so this one is located on bluff and it's all bluff and steep slope on Little Birch Lake here. We have highly erodible soils. We have really good vegetation cover on all of the slope areas. There's no tree removal or anything proposed in the proposed area where the steps are going to continue down the slope. There is floodplain, but not in the where the steps are proposed. The septic system is new as of September of last year, so that is still compliant. Last year, the property owners did obtain a permit for the patio area and the edging rock. And then the original intent there was to do above grade steps to the water. That would all be covered under a minor shoreline permit. And then the decision was made to do the steps at grade and into the hill, which is why it is before you tonight. So that's kind of what the portion of the request is here. So with that, there are 3-foot wide steps from that patio area down to the bottom of the slope that are proposed. All of the area that has been disturbed has been stabilized with the erosion control blanket. You can see that if you're out there on site. And there's really no further issues of erosion or anything because that took place. There is a woodland native plant mix that is proposed for any additional disturbed areas. Some of this was already kind of planted in the areas that were disturbed before, and that would take care of the rest of the area. There's 3 recommended conditions that all disturbed areas should be covered with plastic-free erosion control blanket within 3 days of disturbance. Rocks and boulders to be placed alongside the steps cannot be stacked to create retaining walls, and that the native plant mix that's proposed should be planted by October 31st of this year. With that being said, like I said, all the areas are disturbed, or that were disturbed before, have all been stabilized, and it's a fairly small area that's in the request in front of you, but the reason it is here is because it is bluff. So there's no written correspondence on this one, and that's about it.
All right, now are the applicants remote on this one?
I'll have to check here.
We have applicants here. Please come up. Your names and addresses, please.
Excuse me. I'm Tom Walker. We live at 16664 Duluth Trail in Lakeville. This is our property in Melrose.
I'm Chris Murphy, contractor for Mr. Walker in Annandale, Minnesota. Backyard Reflections.
Thank you. Anything to add at this point? Commission members, questions?
Mr. Chair, Nick, I'm trying to understand exactly which steps are we putting in here now?
Sure. So the steps I have shown here are the ones that are right off of the patio heading down slope. This is what would be continued down to the bottom of the slope. All of the steps that are further up the slope here were constructed a number of years ago before the ordinance required steps to require a permit on a slope like this. That ordinance change was made like 3 years ago that now it would be required to get a permit for that, but those were done before the permit was needed.
Okay, so are those steps going to remain? The ones the ones that are with the wood with the granite chips?
Yes, the applicant indicated that those would remain.
Okay. So then, which are we're talking about? The new steps would be how many steps? Right where are we talking about?
From here down to the bottom of the slope here.
Okay.
Down this way.
Anything more, anyone? Nothing? Anyone from the public need to say anything about it or address us at all? Any correspondence? Let's close the public hearing. I need a motion.
I'd move to close the public hearing.
And a second. Anyone?
I'll
Rich,
second it.
You're the man of the seconds. That was my job before. I have a motion to close and second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Further discussion? Anyone?
Mr. Chair. Nick, typically would we not request pylons with steps that were not into the bank?
Yeah, so if it was done that way, it could be done under a minor shoreline permit.
Okay.
That is the preferred method. But I mean, the applicants have the option to, come before you to request on something like a bluff like this to do the, in-ground steps. When installed properly, it doesn't really lead to additional erosion down the line. It's more so there's more risk involved, which is why it would come before you, and that's why the ordinance is that way.
And you're saying too there will not be side retaining boulders?
Correct. That's one of the conditions, that you can't have retaining walls alongside.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, question for staff based on what you just said. Risk in terms of, what's the risk we're looking at?
Well, when installed properly, the risk is very low. I mean, Backyard Reflections has been a licensed shoreline contractor for a long time with the county, and this is not the first time they've done this. So then other contractors have done this successfully as well without erosion problems, and that's another, reason with the condition there to within 3 days of disturbance to have it, covered with erosion control blanket to reduce that risk.
So it's the risk of erosion.
Right. Whenever you have an area that's disturbed on a bluff, that's the risk.
I'm curious, Nick, now in the future, if he wants to replace those upper steps, he would be able to do that again then, wouldn't he?
Right. Because it was existing at the time of the ordinance change.
Right, right. Anything further?
Yeah, question about the boulders. Is that the plan? To put boulders all along the steps here?
Boulders as needed, and with the condition, it said not to be stacked, so just single boulders as needed to retain base or grade.
Just not forming a wall, no step, right? Just to reinforce and add weight. Sure. Anything more? We'll go to the findings of fact.
I just want to add one more thing here too. In terms of the ordinance, one of the concerns, like whenever there's retaining walls that are proposed or something, one of the big things is aesthetics from the water, from the lake, looking to the land. And in leaf-on conditions, you're not even really able to see the vast majority of this. One thing I always like to do is look at other properties around the lake and how wide open it really is, and a lot of even steep slopes and bluffs. Whereas, this is all, you can barely see any of this from the water. So that's maybe another consideration to think about too.
Thank you. Is the proposal consistent with the zoning ordinance? Why or why not?
Mr. Chair, I believe it is in accordance with sections 10.2.2.11B, paragraph 3 of the Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439.
Thank you, Dave. Does the proposal conform to the comprehensive plan of the county? Please list applicable sections. I'll just say that we've got lakeshore living policies here to encourage shoreline protection and restoration methods and to create riparian standards that balance the interests of both year-round and seasonal residents. How about that?
And Mr. Chair, I would add our nature goals. Nature goal number 1, preserve, restore, and protect important natural systems and natural resources.
All right, thank you. Is the proposal compatible with the existing neighborhood? Why or why not?
Mr. Chair, staff has indicated that what the applicant is proposing is consistent with surrounding neighborhoods and can't really tell the difference.
Thank you. Thank you. How has the applicant demonstrated that standards and criteria stated in the ordinance will be satisfied? I think we can see that he's already doing that. Other issues pertinent to the matter? Anything from the township, city, permits, anything? All right, I expect a motion then.
I would move to approve.
We have a motion to recommend approval and a second.
I'll second.
And a second. All those in favor say aye.
Mr. Chair, just a clarification on the motion. Is that with the 3 conditions?
Let's make sure we mention those 3 conditions then. To approve with 3 conditions. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Number 6. Number 6 is a request for a conditional use permit from Lucas Sjostrom of Bruton on behalf of Gerard and Linda Jennison of Bruton. According to sections 4.8, 6.7, and 9.2.5b of Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439 to add 4 campsites and expand an agriculturally oriented business in the Ag 80 zoning district. The property is under consideration, is located in the northeast quarter, lying west of 463rd Avenue in Section 4 of North Fork Township. The property address is 31535 463rd Avenue of Bruton. Roll call of members who visited the site. Jason?
Yes.
Dave?
I did not.
Jason?
Yes.
I did. Jake?
I did.
Rich?
I did.
Tara?
Yes.
And Joe?
Yes.
Thank you all. Staff report, please. Who's got this one?
I got the rest now.
Okay.
So yeah, conditional use permit to expand an agriculturally oriented business. So this has been before the Planning Commission a couple times in the past. In 2013, they received a CUP for Redhead Creamery. And then in 2022, they were here for North Fork Distillery. So now they're requesting to add 4 campsites. Those would be campsites without any services. There wouldn't be sewer and water put in for them or anything. And then they also are requesting to be able to continue to expand the business for things related to the dairy operation out there without needing to come back for a CUP every single time. So those are the 2 requests that are made tonight. The zoning's agriculture 80. This is on 463rd Avenue, which is a township road. It's not within any overlay districts or areas of concern. There's no wetlands close to the campsites. Let's see. So the campsites are strictly for customers of the creamery or the distillery. So it's not, it won't be just for anybody to come and use the campsites. Setbacks are all met. There's no indication of any outdoor storage with this change. There's ample room for parking on site. No signs are proposed. As far as licensing, 4 campsites do not require licensing from the county. At 5 campsites, you are required to get licensed. So they'll be limited to 4. There's a couple homes and a couple feedlots within a half mile of the property. And the surrounding zoning is agriculture 80 and agriculture 160. The comprehensive plan shows this as an ag and rural area. Proposed conditions that we have. So we included the conditions from the previous 2 CUPs. So we added that into this one. So number 1 is related to CUP 13-13 for the cheese processing plant and includes the conditions from that permit. Condition 2 is the farm winery / distillery, which is conditional use permit P-019966. And those conditions are listed. And then in addition to those conditions, we have number 3, up to 4 campsites are allowed. Number 4, value-added products and or services related to the dairy operation are allowed and subject to the requirements of Ordinance 439. And number 5, a conditional use permit amendment will be required for a proposed use not listed in conditions 1 through 4. That's all that I have at this time.
Thank you. Are the applicants here? Please come up. Introduce yourself, please.
Good evening, Lucas Shostrom, 31535 463rd Avenue in Bruton.
Anything you'd like to add to the discussion or report at this time?
No, well, yes. You can't say no and then keep talking. Yes, I think, had these campsites been allowed 2 years ago, we would have put that on the CUP previously. So the second request, we've had opportunities in terms of what is future processing, what's that mean? We have opportunities that some people have come to us wanting, although it's 2.5 hours away, the Hastings Creamery that no longer exists in Minnesota was a nice mid-size processing plant that a lot of people used. It had a bad summer and no longer exists. And so we've had some customers of there approach us and say, maybe we want to do something here. We've installed dairy robots, and as such, we have different space than we had 2 years ago. We've had some opportunities come to us we did not expect, and so we don't know where and what we would do, but the future dairy processing would be kind of contiguous, adjoining current buildings, planned in a way that I think would fit the property, but that's why you don't see building plans, and that's why we would need to go for a construction permit at that point. So.
So, I mean, real quick question for staff. I totally get where you make oxygen based on this. All other permitting and things that would need to happen that are like called the standard processes and orders in place. It's just that we don't always have to keep. Oh, I turned it off. I'm sorry, Deb. Back on. Okay, basically all standards apply, whether permitting, all those things. This just prevents them from having to come back and keep modifying the CUP every time their business needs change a little bit. Is that
Correct.
accurate?
That's the request. So we tried to word the condition so that it's requests related to the dairy operation. So there's got to be some tie to the farm with how they want to expand. That wouldn't have to come back, but it's still going to be subject to construction site permits, septics, meeting the accessibility code, parking. All of that stuff still needs to be met. It would just be an internal staff review rather than in front of the planning commission.
Appreciate it. I just wanted to double check, clarify that's what that condition was getting at. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if have we done, I can't remember us doing something like that before.
So we thought long and hard on that too. It's similar to what we did a few years ago for Hemker's Zoo. We did add a condition that basically anything they want to add to the zoo is allowed. If they want to add another animal building, or they added a coffee shop, and like anything related to the zoo that they want to offer there, we did add a condition that they wouldn't need to come back for a conditional use permit every time something changes. That was the only one we could really think of that might have been similar to this.
What about adding like more animal units?
That would all fall under the feedlot requirements, so that may be different. That may still, if they get over a certain threshold of animal units, then they're required to get a conditional use permit. So that falls under different rules that wouldn't apply here.
Okay. Lucas, while you're here, we were out there the other day. It looks nice, and that distillery, wow.
We got state approval today, so it's now a real legal distillery.
Yeah,
so that's good.
It looks, it's impressive. One other question as far as the camping. You know that right now we're working on an ordinance on camping, okay? But we have not approved those changes yet. So, we have a few questions about that. One thing you had mentioned that you want to use your these campsites for customers, okay? One of my concerns is that potentially that these campsites could become more permanent residents, and so that someone bending the rules, working around the rules, would be perhaps not using it for people that would be in transit, but whether as a permanent form of housing or long-term housing. So just so that you understand that would be my concern with something like this is, someone who puts in their RV, they're going to be there 6 weeks, and that's not a customer. And then your integrity is superb, but someone that's thinking that, gosh, I could maybe provide some housing for somebody, that could potentially skirt that whole issue. That's a concern that I have. Do you understand that?
Yes. May I respond?
Yeah.
Yeah, Commissioner, I certainly understand. I think anyone doing this. So the program we are a part of, and I think you probably found 3 or 4 different programs. The one we're part of is called Harvest Hosts. We don't get any money for it. The handshake electronic agreement is they would be patrons of our business. Otherwise, it's not going to be of any use to us. So we are at a disadvantage. I live right there, and my in-laws live right there. So we don't want extra people hanging around. So it's actually against the rules of this service that we signed up for called Harvest Hosts to accept any money. And that's kind of the agreement. They patronize agricultural businesses in exchange for staying in a camping area.
Okay.
Mi-
Would you have
Mr.
any objection to us setting a limited number of days that a vehicle could remain there?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the terms are of the site, but I mean, they better not be there for more than 7. My wife would go nuts. So.
Okay. Because in the statute that we're looking at, Lucas, we don't have a date, and that's very concerning to me. And so before we get that statute complete, I would be concerned about not having any date or a number of days that a vehicle could be there. So.
And I did listen to the hearing, and I appreciate those comments. I think one thing right on the other side of those trees, when we chop silage and when we do manure, we have people staying over, and that happens in agricultural zoning all over the county all the time. And so, it's happening for safety reasons. They're staying up till 11, midnight, 1, 2 a.m. and not going home. And so this gives them a designated space, which is nice for us in our situation. But I just think that's something that farmers and agricultural businesses like ours, I mean, we understand the concerns. So that's all I wanted to say. I think I appreciate this discussion. That's all.
Okay, good.
Anything more? Anyone?
Question for Joel. So if the board hasn't approved camping or the ordinance for camping, are we asking to approve something that we don't have online or, in the...
Well, Heidi, my opinion is if we approve anything tonight, we are approving it under the old standards, correct?
Well, Mr. Chair, yeah, so with, in the discussions with how we wanted to handle camping and resorts and all this stuff, that was decided that for these types of businesses, you guys wanted to evaluate them, not necessarily hold them to a specific standard in the ordinance, not call them a resort, but evaluate each request on its own merits for what they want to do. So this wouldn't necessarily fall under those new camping rules. This is just a rural tourism business that wants to be able to have a few camping spots. So it doesn't fall under that limited camping requirement, or that's new. So, I mean, any rural tourism business can come and ask, we want to have, one cabin to be able to rent out in conjunction with what we're offering on our property, whatever that business may be. We did have one a few years ago that in Crow River, I believe, that did that. They have a couple lodging units with their farm stay business. So these were kind of being evaluated differently. You could certainly, to that condition, the up to 4 campsites are allowed. You could say transient campsites, say not permanent campsites. You could add a little bit of language there if you felt that was needed.
And to be clear, then, if he was asking for 5, it would be a completely different situation as well.
Right. At 5, the licensing recreational vehicle campground, that ordinance kicks in. So yeah, then it becomes held to a whole nother standard too. Yep.
So we're okay legally?
Yes.
That was my whole concern.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. We're okay with 4.
Yep.
Anything more?
So, Mr. Chair, just using Google Scholar, Harvest Host says your stay is limited to 1 night unless your host says otherwise. So.
Yeah, and I've done really hard work the past 3 years and visited 183 distilleries for you, and
Appreciate that hard work. A dedicated taxpayer.
we were pretty skeptical of it, especially I'll say my in-laws, having other people on the property. But I ran into about 15 of these distilleries that had a Harvest Host experience, and they just said wonderful things, no bad experiences. And of course, there's the 0.01% at some point, but that's why we were like, oh, this sounds like a good deal. And I would say most of these people line up their travels. Most of them, I think, are full-time RVers or all summer RVers, and they will use Harvest Host to go from site to site, and then they'll stay at a national park where they have full service and septic and all of that, and they'll go. So that's kind of how these people move. And so I think most of them, as RVers, only want to be somewhere 1 or 2 or 3 nights at the most. So that was the tough research I've done for you on the subject.
Mr. Chair, and Lucas, you know, I would even argue that maybe you have occasions where 1 day is not enough, okay? Because, for example, when you would have your festival over the weekend, you might even ask your musicians to come here and say, hey, why don't you guys do that? But you can be here 3 days. Would you be comfortable setting a number of days, a maximum number of days?
Like I said, I think 7's easy. Somewhere between 7 and 3 gets gray, you know, because you have
7?
the example.
I would be fine with 7.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're going to go that.
I hate to set the rules for the whole county on my ideas that I thought about for 30 seconds, but for
Okay.
us, 7's fine. Yeah.
All right, I think we have some correspondence. Is there anyone here from the public who wishes to speak? I don't think we have anyone here. Heidi?
Okay, yeah, I did receive 2 letters, and these were shared with Lucas already too, and you guys. So the first one is from Steve and Sherry Manning. So they are concerned with the more projects at the creamery. The dust on 463rd Avenue engulfs our farm site from all the traffic going to and from the creamery. We already paid to have 1,100 feet sprayed with chloride, and it's not nearly enough. The first half of a mile should have dust control to help control the dust. The camping issue, how do we know who is coming out here to camp and what problems come with it? We already have people coming out and parking in our field approaches because they want to go for a walk. Also, people refuse to move over for farm implements. How is a campground an egg-oriented business? Number 3, trash. Our field is covered in trash from over the winter from the creamery, boxes, plastic, styrofoam that I had to clean up before I could farm. And then they feel the creamery should be required to file for conditional use permits in the future, so they have the right to know what else is coming. And then I also had a letter from Andrew Norbert and Ruth Vate. So we as the Outer Stearns County don't see any advantage for the people may bring to this quiet neighborhood. I've seen that when people come from out of the area, the people can put pressure on neighbors to have to shut them down because they don't like the smell. There's no profitability to anyone but themselves. Let's see. They got enough from the taxpayers of Stearns County and the state of Minnesota. So that is all that I received.
Mr. Chair, question for the staff. So when we're looking at the expansions of the CUP, when we're talking about the creamery and distillery are considered one entity, right? So.
Right.
Okay, just clarifications.
Respond to the comments.
Please.
Yeah, I talked to Steve Manning yesterday morning.
Probably.
Yeah, yesterday morning. We had a good conversation. I agreed that we should pay for the dust control. This was the first any of these concerns were raised with us, so that was disappointing. The trash portion is unacceptable to us, and we didn't know about it. And very interesting because we have several walls at the north side of our property, so we didn't know anything was going there, and we said, please let us know if we can pick that up. But I said we agree we should pay for the dust. One of his concerns was last year when we had a lot of construction traffic, there was a lot of southeast wind, and that affected his hay crop, and I can see his concerns with that. So if the wind was from any other direction at the time, it would have been fine. But I will just say we had a good conversation. Mr. Vate, I've never met, and I think he lives about 5 miles south of us. I didn't see him on the map. I'm pretty sure I know where he lives, but I did not get a chance to talk to him. But I intend to do that before the county commissioner hearing if this would pass.
Mr. Chair, another question. Lucas, go back to the site where we see, yeah, there we go. The driveway coming in, Yeah, adjust the map so we can see it, yeah, up a little, even more. When you're coming in, as far as accessing those campsites, when you're coming in, that's your private drive. The other drive, the drive is down at the bottom, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Were you going to access those then right away to the left? You weren't going to bring those, my concern is safety. You're going to have buses out there with kids. Occasionally you have bus tours come out. And then with having those RVs come through there, if those buses and those kids, sometimes elementary school kids don't make good choices.
Right.
So the access would be prior to that then, correct?
Yeah, immediately when you see kind of a change in the field there, that the reason for that change
Right there. Yeah.
that's
That
become
would
our
be
parking lot for Kurdfest. So it's more of a grass alfalfa mix than alfalfa, and we're keeping it like that for the foreseeable future. So that would be where they
the
turn.
access to the
Yep.
camps.
And the buses, on the other hand, they don't stop until they get in the
Correct.
middle of the property there.
Okay.
Good point, though.
Yep.
All right, well, we need a motion.
I'll
to,
make a motion, we close public hearing.
Thank you. Second, please.
Second.
Motion to close and second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The public hearing is closed. Further discussion?
Mr. Chair, can staff address number 4 of the concerns from the letter from the Mannings? Mostly related to how would they find out about it if they were to pass the conditions that are listed?
Right, so if you approve the request to not require them to come back for a conditional use permit, they wouldn't get any public notice if they, wanted to add another element to their business. Yeah, it's basically eliminating the public notice part by saying, yep, you can go ahead as long as you're, related to the dairy operation, what you're adding, and you continue to meet all the ordinance requirements. We're going to basically eliminate the public hearing process part of the zoning approval. So yeah, the neighbors wouldn't get, a written notice like they get now.
Mr. Chair, another follow-up question. Is the business of the dairy, is that completely separate from the creamery or from the distillery? Are these 3 separate things, or are these just 2 separate things?
No, Mr. Chair, Tara, when we came in 2022, it was kind of crazy because we found out 4 weeks before that they could be one business. As we interpreted state law right before that, the distillery needed to be separate to keep our wine and strong beer license. In late October for, I think, a November hearing, we found out it could all be one. So there's no longer a North Fork distillery. It's Redhead Creamery LLC is the creamery distillery processing operation. Gerlindy Farms LLC is the cows, essentially.
Right.
And then Jerry and Linda Jennison own the land, my parents-in-law.
So technically, everything is one thing, and so any expansion to either the dairy that doesn't have to trip a feedlot or...
Right, so the feedlot rules wouldn't come into play with this. So if the feedlot rules require a CUP, then they still need to get a CUP. If, they're adding more animals or changing their manure area or whatever would trigger the feedlot stuff, that's totally separate from this. So this is more related to expansion of the creamery business itself and adding anything related to that.
My only concern, I'm not really concerned about any of this stuff. I'm just trying to think of what would be a concern to the neighbors. And so, unless you had a business idea or venture that was going to cause,
Yeah, Tara,
considerable noise or something else, what kind of venture would you be embarking on that would essentially cause conflict?
Mr. Chair, and I agree. I don't want to give it just a blanket pass to do anything out there.
Right.
For example, could you put go-karts out there? And would that be disturbing the neighborhood? Because again, if they're going to be putting in sidewalk, okay, fine. They're going to be putting up flagpoles, okay, fine. But are we giving them permission to do something that actually would have a negative effect on the neighborhood? I don't know.
Mr. Chair, question for staff. I mean, and to your point, I'd interpret go-karts as being that wouldn't necessarily be a direct value add to the dairy operations.
Well, you did say before that you have music festivals, which I haven't attended any of that, which is probably awesome. But if you were to have expanded music festivals, would that be a concern? Yes. If I was a neighbor and didn't want to do that, didn't want to listen to that.
Mr. Chair, if we refer to the conditions, condition number 5. So it says a conditional use permit amendment will be required for proposed use not listed in conditions 1 through 4. And 1 through 4 is pretty tightly tied into the dairy and the distillery operations. So I don't see anything in there about go-karts or other actions. There's a discussion about the music entertainment, but they are fairly well constrained. So it talks about the cheese processing plants allowed. It's got 4 conditions under that. It talks about the farm, winery, and distillery. It's got a bunch of conditions under that. So I would say based upon the way, if we choose to accept the conditions as laid out, they're fairly constrained to the kind of operations they can do.
And even under the special events, those are clarified with hours of operation and everything.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's true. There's all kinds of restrictions laid forth there.
To make one modification to the recommendations based on our discussions, I would make a change to number 3 that says up to 4 campsites are allowed, and then I would add the language of no individual camper is allowed to stay for more than 7 consecutive days.
I agree.
And if you're good with that, I'll keep you good with your in-laws.
All right. Let's move on to the findings of fact. If I can find my findings. Is the proposal consistent with the zoning ordinance? Why or why not?
Mr. Chair, I believe it is under Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439, Section 4.8, 6.7, and 9.2.5B.
Thank you. Does the proposal conform to the comprehensive plan of the county? List applicable sections, please.
Mr. Chair, I would say there are several. I'll highlight a couple. Under agriculture pillar, there's the striving to support higher farm profitability and family farm stability, and also under business pillar, the acknowledges the economic value of tourism and to the county's economic base.
Thank you, Dave. Is the proposal compatible with the existing neighborhood? Why or why not?
Mr. Chair, I think the proposal is consistent with the current agritourism business that they are operating.
Thank you. How has the applicant demonstrated that standards and criteria stated in the ordinance will be satisfied?
Mr. Chair, in the event that we pass this recommendation on to the county board, we do have the conditions, which would include the modification for the 7 days lodging limit that would satisfy the ordinance restrictions.
Thank you. Yes, that's I mentioned that there are five conditions.
Yes.
All right. Any other issues pertinent to this matter?
Mr. Chair, one thing that came up in terms of one of the comment letters, the willingness of the applicant to do the dust control once that was brought to their attention.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. I'll expect a motion then.
Make a motion to approve with the conditions.
I have a motion. Looking for a second.
Seconded by
Jason. Thank you. Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Lucas, it looks good. Good luck with it.
Yeah.
All righty.
Mr. Chair, before we move on, this ordinance is going to be coming back to the board. And we did have a bit of discussion about that idea about limiting days of that camping.
That makes sense.
Do you feel, I feel strongly by not having a cap, there's a point of it no longer is camping when people are staying there at a more permanent basis. So, I mean, I think 7 days is an adequate amount, especially in rural area.
I agree.
Okay. Any?
This ordinance impacting a site as few as 4?
Well, what I'm concerned about is that people, again, if we have just a person with a raw piece of property, and they open that up, well, let's say they bring in some old Winnebagos, and there they sit, and it becomes something that really is not camping. It becomes somewhat of a residence for some other purpose, and then we get into the whole idea about safety. Okay, you get into the fall and the winter where all of a sudden you end up with a number of people dead in asphyxiation. Yeah. But are we overstepping our boundaries or not? I think camping 7 days is a legitimate number.
I think setting a date, figuring out the date is the key, but.
Mr. Chair, I know part of the discussion we had, and maybe staff can correct me if I'm wrong, one thing we did talk about was farm workers and construction workers who might be there for 3 months working on a site that's not an official campground. I mean, so if we do place that limitation on there, we effectively handicap certain organizations who are critical to the foundation of our functioning economy.
I agree.
Mr. Chair, but that's a valid point. But when you have things like that, is there any reason why we couldn't ask for a special permit?
That would be an option.
Fair enough.
We do allow migrant workers,
right?
Basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
And places for them.
All due respect, good questions, good discussion, but we got to stay on topic here.
You're right. Let's move on. I'm sorry. Agenda item number 7.
It may take 3 weeks to get the job.
From Alan and Michelle Locke of Belgrade. The property owner and applicant are requesting to amend interim use permit P003018 to extend the mining area an additional 20.5 acres in the Ag 40 zoning district. This would bring the mining operation to 34.7 acres total. The expansion would occur in 2 phases. Phase 2 includes 6.4 acres, and Phase 3 includes 14.1 acres. The request is in accordance with Sections 4.18, 7.17, and 9.3.6F of Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439. Quick roll call of members who visited the site. Jason?
Yes.
Dave?
I did not.
Jason?
Yes.
I did. Jake?
I did.
Rich?
I did.
Tara?
I did.
And Joe?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And a staff report, please.
All right, so this is an expansion to a mining operation that was approved originally back in 2015 on 14.2 acres. So they're wanting to add 20.5 acres to it now. Just a little more on the background, there is a small portion that was mined too close to the river, so we do have a compliance agreement to get that reclaimed to meet that 200-foot setback. So that will be done by September. Property is zoned A40. It's located on 383rd Avenue. So it's within shoreline of the North Fork Crow River. Part of the property is in floodplain. The expansion part is outside of floodplain. And there was a study done during the previous conditional use permit to make sure there wasn't going to be any negative impacts to what related to the floodplain and the mining. Our wetland staff did review this, so they've got it proposed in 2 phases. So phase 2, they're good to go on phase 2. Before they would start mining in phase 3, they would need to have a wetland delineation done and wetland approval before they can mine into phase 3. So phase 2 is okay to move forward, and then at whatever time they're ready to go into phase 3, they'll need further wetland review at that point. So as far as the ordinance standards, those were pretty much all met. Believe they're keeping the same hours of operation as their current permit. Setbacks are all met with the proposal. They have signs in place. Surrounding zoning's all agriculture 40. This is in the agricultural area and the comprehensive plan. The proposed conditions, this would be valid until June 9th of 2035. Permitted hours of operation would be 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday, April through November, and no operations allowed on Sundays or holidays. The applicant shall submit and maintain a financial guarantee in the amount of $72,100, which is the existing area plus phase 2. And then prior to operating within the boundary of phase 3, a wetland delineation shall be completed and reviewed by the department, and then the financial guarantee for the area of phase 3 would need to be submitted. The boundary of phase 2 shall be clearly marked on site to prevent mining into phase 3. Truck hauling signs required during times of hauling. An informational sign is required at the entrance to the gravel pit. A gate at the entrance of the pit shall be installed and maintained. The area within the setback requirement of the North Fork Crow River shall be reclaimed by September 1st as required in the compliance agreement. And that's all that I have.
All right, one quick question. So we're not changing anything when it comes to operation times, hours, days, calendar, anything like that?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. Applicants, introduce yourselves, please.
I'm Al Locke, Brennan Locke, his son.
And your address?
24471 383rd Avenue, Belgrade.
Thank you. Did you have anything you wanted to add at this point?
No, not really. It's just doing the same thing we've been doing for the last 7-8 years.
Sure, okay. Commission
phase this summer.
I'm sorry?
We're going to finish up pretty much a lot of the first phase this summer, digging the clay out and reclaiming some farmland, and got all the berms leveled, seeded this year.
All right, thank you.
Reclaim that 200 feet.
Sure. Commission members, Joe, I know you got some questions.
Just, yeah, I just want to move it on, and I just got a couple of questions. So the moving into phase 2, on phase 2, we've had the wetland delineation already done at a previous time?
The wetland staff didn't require a delineation for phase 2. They weren't concerned with what they could see for phase 2.
Okay.
There were specific areas
Right
within
from
phase
old
3 that
mapping.
they were
Okay.
concerned with.
Sure.
So.
Okay, all right. And then have you exhausted all the resources in phase 1? Is that why you're expanding on?
No, not all of them yet. We're getting down more towards the clay, and I have to find a different gravel with less clay in it to blend everything.
Okay. And then just curious, is there any special project coming up that we're going to need this gravel for? Do you know?
Well, I sell to the townships and county. I might have a 25,000 ton bid with Stearns County
Okay.
for a road project.
Okay.
They haven't got back to me yet.
Okay, well, you know, I see gravel as a resource, and when we can find it, we use it, so.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if this also helps some of our transportation issues that we have as far as reconstruct and things like that, so.
Well, it saves the townships a lot of money because I have a pit in our township, and that's about $2 a yard cheaper. And,
Amen.
And that's $6,000 to $8,000 a year just for our township.
Like I said, we'd like to use the resource, so, yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, question for staff regarding the financial guarantees. So we've got the 2,500 for number 1, right? And then number 2 is an additional 72,000. And then number 3 would be an additional, those are additive, right? So it's not.
Well, so for condition number 3, the 72,100, that would cover phase 1 and phase 2.
So the 2,500 from phase 1 would then carry into that one.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
that can be rolled into this one or
Okay.
released and then a new one submitted in the $72,000 amount.
Okay. And then, so phase 3 would be a different.
Yep. Yeah. So phase 3, once they have approval to move into phase 3, then it's an additional 49,350 would need to be submitted. And that can be, you know, if he reclaims half of phase 1 and is no longer mining there, then we don't need that, you know, a guarantee for that number of acres. So that can be, you know, adjusted a little bit
Okay. Thank you for the math
as we
test.
go.
Anyone else? This is a public hearing. If there's anyone here from the public who wishes to speak, do we have any correspondence at all?
No written correspondence.
Had no one here? Okay, a motion, please.
Motion to close public hearing.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion to close and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'm sorry, motion carries. There are no nays. Okay. Any further discussion from anyone?
Not on my end.
We'll move on to the findings of facts then. All righty. Is the proposal consistent with the zoning ordinance? Why or why not?
Mr. Chair, I believe it does. Zoning ordinance number 439, section 4.18, 7.17, and 9.3.6.
Thank you. Does the proposal conform to the comprehensive plan of the county? List applicable sections.
Keep it rolling. Yes, under the nature goals, I believe it qualifies under number 4, protect the county's aggregate resources and provide for reasonable economic use of the aggregate, which Commissioner Persky mentioned is important for townships and the county.
Exactly. Thank you very much. Is the proposal compatible with the existing neighborhood?
Mr. Chair, I think the proposal is consistent with the existing neighborhood as it's just an expansion of the current use.
Thank you, Tara. How has the applicant demonstrated that standards and criteria stated in the ordinance will be satisfied?
Mr. Chair, we have a variety of conditions plus a creeping financial guarantee section.
I would also point out that he's been doing well so far.
Yep.
Other issues pertinent at all need to be mentioned?
This is just an addition, existing phase 2, current operation, which also makes it easier.
Thank you. All righty.
I'd make a motion to recommend approval with the 9 conditions.
I'll
Thank you.
second that.
I've got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
I'd say everyone that's left, if we can get through it. I don't know. It's a good question. Yep. Well, it's a good question.
Take 5.
Oh, yeah. I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry, folks. We're going to break for a quick 10 minutes. 10 minutes. We're just going to take a break, and we'll get back to this one, because this one's going to be the longest one and the one we've all been waiting for. I apologize. Thank you. We'll be back. At what time? 8. 8.
They were talking about after the game, and Irving could hardly walk. So, I was just, wait, well, he's 32, which, it was interesting driving down there. I guess the basketball years, that's old, I don't know. But
Mikes, Mikes, please.
Yeah, it's true.
All right, let's get her going.
No, I'm not either.
Back in session.
We'll come back to order, please. We will proceed with agenda item number 8 here. This is Xcel Energy DBA Northern States Power as the applicant. They're requesting a conditional use permit to continue to reconstruct and realign approximately 4 miles of 69 kilovolt transmission line. The request is in accordance with the sections 4.8 and 7.11 of Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439. Let's roll call the members who visited the site. Jason?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
I did. Jake?
I did.
Rich?
I did.
And Tara?
Yes.
And Joe?
Yes.
Thank you. Staff report, please.
All right, so this was an item continued from March, so I'm sure you all remember it. So in the staff report, it listed a number of things that were requested in the March meeting in order to be able to further review and make a decision on this request. The main thing is they did change the layout of the line along Fruit Farm Road. So instead of crossing Fruit Farm Road and going on private property, it's staying on St. John's property in that area. I believe that was the main change to the layout from what we saw in March. And then I guess I can let the applicants address, the other items that were concerns in March or, what you guys have questions on. So again, still just having the one condition that it's subject to execution and recording of the easements along the whole transmission line route. But yeah, I guess that's all that I have at this point.
Are the applicants here?
Yes.
Please introduce yourselves.
Ben Galay, Principal Engineer with Xcel Energy, 414 Nicolette Mall, Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Connor Puff, WSB Consultant for Xcel Energy, 701 Xenia Avenue, Minneapolis, 4416.
Thank you, gentlemen. Do you have anything to add at this point?
No, thank you.
Well, we'll go right to commissioner questions. Anyone?
No question.
Really?
No.
All right, well, this is a public hearing. We're open to the public. If you are here to speak, please come up to the podium and speak.
I do actually have one quick question regarding the rerouting. Was that relatively, I realize there's more engineering and stuff required on some of that, but a relatively easy process to shift that line across the east side of Fruit Farm Road, or are there some complexities to that?
It wasn't overly onerous. What we've proposed here, what we modified to, was a concession that allowed us to use, I'd say, 90% of what our existing design materials that were already on order, et cetera, so that alleviated the complexity and that pain point. So not a significant amount of time or effort, just basically desktop engineering time. We shouldn't have much of material or construction time impact.
It's good. It was a nice change, so well done.
One question. On the, what is this, the conditions, the page 25 of the packet, well, page 6 of 25 of the packet. Number 14, the question that was asked and answered was regarding if the Without signed easements from all parties on the proposed realignment route, are you able to proceed with the project? I think it's a very long answer, but the key statement is the very last one, which is final route settled by voluntary easement. Were all those voluntary easements obtained?
Yes, we have easements that final one signed today, which could be recorded tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right, was there anyone here who wished to speak? Please come up to the podium if you want to say something. Introduce yourself.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, my name is Tim Haig. My residence is 14234 Fruit Farm Road, St. Joseph, Minnesota 56374. You might remember me from the last public hearing. I have to say that, you know, the size and type of the construction is substantially different from that which was constructed in the 1960s. No matter what happens to the route, this is a big change for our quiet little neighborhood. And so in my interest, and I'm very happy that St. John's and Excel have cooperated to move the line across the road off of my property and my brother's property. But I would also, I was just discussing with these gentlemen here earlier on the location and type of the poles. I received a phone call yesterday which described a route that was different than what I'm looking at now. The notice which we received was different than what we're looking at now. I mean, there's been a lot of changes. It's been a half-baked project from day one, but it is on St. John's property, so that's a big plus. But like I said, the size and type of construction, I don't know who regulates that, but I'm sure the engineers do. And if it has to be what it's going to be, it's going to be. But it doesn't make me happy. But I would like to address the distribution wires. We're talking. This is a transmission line that the CUP is for, but it's owned by the utility Excel, which also owns the distribution wires, which are the lower two on the poles that are co-located along the entire route. And it's my concern that if the line is relocated to the other side, which is proposed, and I'm in favor of, I would like the distribution lines to also be relocated and be co-located on those poles so as we don't have double poles going down Fruit Farm Road. Those poles, if they are just as old as the rest of them, and the reason is the infrastructure demands to be updated. A couple of directional bores. My power is underground, and I paid to put it underground. That's where I think it belongs. The distribution lines could be either co-located on the poles, or they could be plowed underground the entire route where they don't wish to co-locate it. And I think that should be a condition of this conditional use permit, that the utility have to either co-locate those wires or plow them underground, because I want all the old poles gone. They don't have an easement for them either. So that's my biggest rub right now. And yeah, just the zigzag nature of the proposed route it's going to be a pretty substantial change. Right on Fruit Farm Road, where it jumps from the north side of Fruit Farm Road to the south side of Fruit Farm Road, we're talking probably two poles 80 feet apart, maybe, right in the vicinity of the Ossendorfs. It's going to be right at the end of the cable driveway. I wish there was a better way, but I guess these gentlemen have done their fine work, and it's up to you guys to decide whether it is justifiable. I think other folks have suggested other routes. My personal favorite would be, if with all the investment in this infrastructure and all the expense and everybody not wanting to look at it, I wish that there was a way to relocate the substation to the north side of Flynn Town, so that clearly when the wires get to the substation at the end of the blue line, at the end of the red line, it's from there, I don't think St. John's got a single wire in the air. It's all underground. It's just a matter of getting it from 69 kV down to what that underground network can handle. I just wish that could be done and avoid this whole mess, this whole zigzaggy this whole mess. But that's for people with better degrees than me and to decide. And I think the only thing I can really ask for right now is that we don't have two sets of poles down Fruit Farm Road. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Did you want to respond to that? To clarify anything about the co-location of those lines, or?
I guess the only clarification I would offer is the statement is correct. Those relocating and distribution is not incorporated in this project where the two don't intersect. So we don't have plans at the moment. Presumptually, there's useful life left in that distribution asset. Once it's expired and it needs to be maintained, then that route would be considered at that time, which it often would be co-locating back with the transmission asset. But that won't be instigated until it's at the end of its useful life and it needs to happen.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
I want to just be clear or make sure I understand. The entire line, the blue line that's being proposed here, all the poles and are going to be constructed on property owned by the Order of St. Benedict's, correct? Is there any other private property that requires easement for this project?
So it'd be north of 325th, and part of it varies. There's kind of a section right up on the curve of Fruit Farm Road. You can see it from the map there. So where the purple line would be
okay.
A private landowner.
Okay. And you have an easement sign for that, you said?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, sir, go ahead, please.
Yes, Chairman, my name is Jeff Eink. I live on Fruit Farm Road, 14204 Fruit Farm Road. You can see my name right on the corner there. I wasn't here at the last meeting, but I guess my one concern is also if there's going to be two sets of poles, or they've taken the old one out, because the old one is basically right there. So if that's going to be gone, or all the old poles are going to be gone, and then if they're just going to distribute across here to the pole that's there to the house, I could understand that, but I was just want to know, those guys could clarify that. I don't know. That's my concern. Not just poles on one side where the blue is, and then a bunch of poles yet still on where the red side is. That's my main concern there. I don't know if they can answer that, or.
To be clear, the red line was the previous plan,
Right.
and
that's
the
where
blue line
existing-
is the
that's-
current
yeah.
plan.
So, I know power has to come to my house and everybody else's some way or another, whether it's another pole on my south side there, or if they're going to use that one in the corner or not. See, we heard they're taking out the old ones, but you don't know. So they might have to leave some. We don't know exactly. Like I said, we don't want a whole bunch of poles on one side and still, with only two wires, and then the big ones on the right side. So we still,
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Any correspondence?
Yes, we did get a few letters, which were emailed to you yesterday. You've got physical copies there. I have copies there if you guys want them. So I will summarize those right now. One from Stephen Saup, concerned with the justification for relocating the line. Some of the current poles are located in compromised soil conditions. However, there will be relocated poles in compromised soil conditions too. Request conditions on the CUP related to protecting the wetland and creek during and after installation. We did get some correspondence from MnDOT just indicating that a short form highway permit is required for crossing I-94. And then also a letter from Dan Vogel. So to summarize that, there have been lies and misrepresentation of the facts by Excel. They claim they went through 7 to 10 route options, but those weren't shared with the landowners at the public meetings. Only 2 options were shared. Claim the reason for relocating is to get poles out of the water. However, the line that was recently rebuilt along I-94 has 6 poles in water. They want to move the line out of Flynn Town student housing. However, Flint Town was built after the line was in place. Also want to move the line away from County Road 159 due to guests coming to campus. Would prefer a line that crosses I-94 east of the overpass and follow the County Road 159 right-of-way. Several items requested at the last Planning Commission meeting were not addressed. Routing the line on the Himsel and Meyer properties goes against the comprehensive plan. So that's a summary of what his comments were.
All right. Motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion, we close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Further discussion.
Mr. Chair, I think from the last hearing that we had, there's been significant changes that were the main point of concern from the last hearing with regards to the private property. I think in terms of what we were actually looking at, that question that was asked and answered, which was basically, do they have permission from all private landowners to put the lines where they have them now? And they've stated that they do, although I don't think that maybe the civic engagement in this project didn't go very well or wasn't completed to the best of their ability. It seems now that they have met the requirements that they need to move forward.
Thank you.
Just clarification, but the way I'm understanding it, the existing distribution lines are where they currently stand, and we're putting a new transmission line, which has been now rerouted. Those will very likely operate independently for a few years until the point where those other poles are unable to be maintained, and then typically speaking, I'm not saying in this case, but normally, then those lines would eventually be rerouted to the beefier poles where the transmission line's located. Is that a fair understanding of kind of the current state?
Yes, Commissioner. The primary drivers when any of this infrastructure needs to be rebuilt is to try to minimize the public and environmental impact as much as possible.
Yeah.
So wherever there's existing facilities that can be co-located, that's the first choice.
And based on that, it's also fair in saying to relocate those lines now would be additional costs that really no one has planned for and wouldn't be needed until those other existing, again, currently existing poles had to be replaced.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything further?
Mr. Chair, I could have asked Jeff or Tim while they were up there. Do we have fiber going down Fruit Farm Road? Do we have fiber?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. Fiber, yeah. Is it on the side where the poles are? So is there a utility easement for that fiber? It's on the west side. Okay. Okay, so but they're in a utility easement, is that correct? There's no utility easement? Okay. Typically, that stuff runs in an easement or in the right of way, so. Okay.
No more? All righty. Excuse me. Well, we will proceed then to the findings of facts. Is the proposal consistent with the zoning ordinance? Why or why not?
Mr. Chair, I do believe it's consistent with the ordinance number 439, sections 4.8 and 711.
Thank you, Jason. Does the proposal conform to the comprehensive plan of the county? List applicable sections, please.
Mr. Chair, I believe it does under the connectivity goals. Coordinate infrastructure and service needs with development and encourage development where the infrastructure and services are adequate to serve that growth. I'd also add, develop and maintain a transportation system that promotes the safety, mobility, and access of all users. In this case, it's utilities.
Thank you. Is the proposal compatible with the existing neighborhood? Why or why not?
Mr. Chair, I'm going to go with based on perspective. We're basically talking about adding an additional set of lines on the opposite side of the road where there's currently already power lines that are running. So depending on what your perspective of how much change that is, you could probably argue that both ways, but I'm going to say it is pretty consistent with what's currently in the area.
Thank you. Excuse me. How has the applicant demonstrated that standards and criteria stated in the ordinance will be satisfied?
Mr. Chair, they've given us a pretty extensive engineering report, and we do have the conditional use requirement under the condition for this. So those two areas indicate.
There's, in addition to that, there is the condition regarding the execution and recording of the easements along the transmission route as well, and that's also an important factor here.
Right. I would also mention other issues. The MnDOT request. Can you clarify for me what that was?
That was requiring, they need a short form highway permit, I believe is what they called it, for crossing I-94 with the lines.
All right.
And the last thing I'd say, I think it's pertinent to the matters. Clearly, there's different opinions about how these power lines could be run or should be run, all right? But there's been a lot of research done on it. We went back to a process, and some of the concerns of residents were heard and rerouted to try to address those things. So you're never going to end up with a plan that everyone agrees with, but I think both sides did a good job of at least coming to the best resolution that could be done in this case.
Mr. Chair, this has been a fairly controversial issue. So depending upon how the board votes on this, what is the process? So for people who aren't familiar with this, what is the process that happens after this? Is there any other realm for public input?
So after you guys make a recommendation tonight, either way, it will go to the county board on June 4th for a final decision. So at this point, based on the time frame the county has to make a decision has to be made on June 4th to either approve it or deny it, unless the applicants are willing to sign a waiver. If the board wants another public hearing, we see that occasionally, but otherwise, if the applicants won't sign a waiver to allow for more time, a decision has to be made June 4th by the county board. Okay, and it's a public meeting, but it's not a public hearing. So there won't be any testimony taken at that meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. That's important clarification. All right, then.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion. We recommend approval with the one condition.
And I will second that.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, moving on to number 9. We have to approve some minutes.
Mr. Chair, board members, you know, this was a controversial topic. It's going to come to the board. Do you think there's anything that would need to be said to the board other than let them review it in their packet?
The one I think it's important, the majority of this is on St. John's property. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, this is the lion's share of it. Yep.
Yeah. And St. John's knows what they're doing with these kinds of projects. And they go by the rules, and they're really up to date.
you look at the packet and there were all these issues that were addressed. And one of the things was to meet with the townships. Avon Township met with them and approved it. Collegeville, they met with them. But Collegeville was going to have, that was on April 30th, I think they referred to it. So we didn't get the information about Collegeville, how did they vote it up or vote it down, that wasn't in the packet. But Excel did reach out to the township governments.
And the reason I'm asking is, again, I value this board's opinion. And then also, you know, I ask enough questions, if not too many questions. But that way, then the board doesn't have to ask those questions.
Switching the lines around was a big deal. To me, it was. Rerouting that line showed a lot of concessions on their side and logical ones. I mean, I think that's only fair. It's servicing their property. To reroute that line to their side of the road was a significant change to me.
I would recommend when the commission, the board members review this, there's two documents they should look at. So they're going to get this. Are they going to get both packets?
Well, it'll be on consent, correct?
It'll be on consent. We
So that
typically
means-
include the planning, the packet you got tonight is what typically gets included with their packet.
So will they also have the original one?
That's
Because
what
we
he's
can-
asking them.
Because we continued this.
Yeah.
So it might be useful for the board
See the
to
original,
see
the
two.
layout, the plans.
It is in there.
Okay, well, here's where I'm good with it, okay? But if there's anything else that needs to be discussed, you know, I'm fine with pulling it for any type of discussion. Otherwise, I'm good with it.
I mean, I think it's a win for the neighbors. I mean,
Okay.
the property on the west of Fruit Farm, I mean, they're not going to see these much larger transmission poles that they were looking at originally that we denied. And eventually those power lines, it sounds like, will probably be gone.
The distribution
Yeah,
lines.
the distribution lines.
Right.
And so, I mean, I don't know when that's going to happen, but I think ultimately it could be several years. I don't know, but it's going to be
I think-
an improvement for them.
I think the biggest issue was that they didn't do due diligence with the landowners like they should have, or they didn't do it to the degree that it needed to be before they brought it here. They pushed the project forward.
And then sort
And
of building
so-
on what Tara said, I felt jammed.
Yeah.
So when they came to us 2 meetings ago, they're like, our stuff's out there.
Yeah.
We've got stuff on the ground.
Right.
We're ready to build. And they're like, you're going to approve this. And I think they were kind of surprised. when
I
we
think they were
continued that.
also surprised,
Yep.
but at the same time, it was when you come and you don't even have that question number 14 for me was the kicker because they had a very long explanation for why la 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 la.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, it basically says like, yeah, we have to have easements, and now we have them, and we didn't last time, and that was kind of a big that was a big thing for me.
Okay. Should we vote to approve minutes?
Please do.
I would move we approve last month's minutes.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We approve the minutes.
Adjourn.
Wait, there's some kind of other discussion here. I don't know what that is, or did we just do that?
But I think you just
Oh,
completed.
okay.
I don't see anything.
We are
I'll
adjourned.
second adjourning. Okay, you did it. Thank you.
Adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
I thought this was going to be a lot more of this.
There.
Nicely
So there-